Good morning Year 4 and welcome to Tuesday's comprehension lesson. Now before we begin with our learning for today, we're just going to do a starter, so a little bit of a warm up, same as yesterday, that's just going to get our brains into gear. So we're going to have a look at my spag starter that we've got on the board. Now to begin with, we're going to be looking at our spellings. So I want to see if you can spot and correct the spelling mistakes in this sentence here. So let's read the sentence together. The roads were very icy. So we're saying that the roads, they were very icy, they were very slippy. Have all of my words been spelt correctly in this sentence, or can you spot one of those words which has not been spelt correctly? Okay, so hopefully you would have realised that we have got a spelling mistake, so I do need my pink pen, and I'm going to do the same as yesterday, and I'm going to spot my spelling mistake. And I can see that my spelling mistake is where it says icy. Okay, and when we say that something's icy, the way that this is written is I and then C, icy, and that's not how we spell it. So I'm going to put an SP just above that word because that's a spelling error. So I'm going to put the correct spelling right above it. So we've got I-C-Y, and that's the correct spelling for icy. Okay, so we've done our spelling starter for today. Now we're going to move on to our punctuation. So can you identify where the missing comma needs to go? And I'll read you this sentence out and think about, where do I pause, where do I take a breath? Behind the clouds, the moon was shining. Okay, so behind the clouds, the moon was shining. Can you see where I've taken a breath and I need to have that punctuation in there? Behind the clouds, the moon was shining. Now, hopefully you would have noticed that this is another preposition. It's telling me where something is, behind the clouds. So I need to have some punctuation. And I'm going to put my P for punctuation because there's a punctuation error here. And then I'm going to put a comma because that's where I've taken a breath and it's telling me where the moon is shining. Okay, so my punctuation is now complete. So I've done my first and my second part of today's starter. Now moving on to grammar. So I want you to identify the noun in this sentence. So when we're talking about the noun, I have put in brackets there that the noun is the object. So let's read that sentence out together as well. Max forgot his lunchbox. What is the object? Okay, what is the object, the noun in that sentence? I'll read it again for you. Max forgot his lunchbox. Okay, so I'm going to circle the noun. Who knows which word in that sentence I'm going to circle? So it should be lunchbox. Remember, it's not going to be Max because Max is the name of a person, so they would actually be called a proper noun, not a noun. The lunchbox is the object. So now we have completed all three of our spag starters for today. Now I'm going to get you to draw your attention to the learning question above me, and we're going to see what we're doing today, because yesterday we were writing our story about the lonely dragon, weren't we? And then today I did say to leave all of these questions that are in your book blank, and I'm going to show you because that's what we're going to be coming on to today. So my learning question is, can I create comprehension style questions for my own story? So you'll notice that in your book, the page that I told you to not have a look at, now I've written some examples in there, but these are where your comprehension questions usually are. Now, because there was no story in there yesterday, there was no comprehension questions because we didn't have the story. So we've written our story. Now what we need to do is think about what questions we want to be asking our reader to complete. So this could be for somebody in your household that you want to test. Okay, so we were talking about the lonely dragon, and we've begun with that Joel was walking on his way back home from school, and he heard a snuffling sound behind the trees, and he was astonished to find an orange dragon who had tears coming down his face, and you all gave me some fantastic stories. They were absolutely brilliant, so well done. It was really nice to come and read all of those as well, because we've got so many different stories of what the journey that the dragon had and Joel, so that was really nice. Now what you are going to do today is you're going to get your teacher head on, and you need to think of comprehension style questions for your reader to complete. Okay, so you're not going to be actually answering these, you're going to be writing the questions, but you'll know what questions to write because it was your story of the lonely dragon. Now just to help us think about some questions, you can see here that I've put use your reading dogs. If you're thinking, I just don't know what question I could ask them, think about what style you want to go for first. You might want a Rex Retriever, so it's picking it out of the text. It could be find and copy, or where in the text does it say this, or where were they going, how did they get there, who did this. So with Rex Retriever you might want to start with these sort of sentence starters. So it could be who, it could be, we'll put this at the top, find and copy. Okay, it could be how, when, and these are all answers that you can find inside your text. Where, and I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not going to put why, because we can use that for a different reading dog skill. So if we're thinking about finding copy, who, how, when, where, these are all questions that you could be asking where the answer is inside the text. Okay, let's have a look at another reading dog that I've looked at. So now we've got Vocabulary Victor. Now this week we've been looking at online thesauruses, online dictionaries, and these are really good for thinking of synonyms, so words that have a similar meaning. So you can use Vocabulary Victor to get your reader to answer questions which are finding synonyms for words. So you could start with a sentence that says, find a synonym for the word, and then you could choose a word from your story. You'd have an example, and then the reader would be finding the answer for that as well. Now I've done a few of my own inside for my story. So my story was with Bruno, the orange dragon, and we read our story yesterday. If you're new to this video and you're not sure what the story was, then please have a look at yesterday's video, and I do read you all of the story that I have done on my adventures with Joel and the dragon, which I have named Bruno. Okay, so let's go under the visualiser and have a look at some examples that I have done myself. Right, so I've done 3, and these are some that I've used that are already in the book, and I've just changed how they look. Let's get it so you can see that straight, and let's zoom in a little bit. There we go. So I've done a Vocabulary Victor question for this first one, and it says write down a word the author could have used instead of said. So a word that they could have used instead of said. So really what I'm asking for is a synonym for said, and I've just blocked it off here because I was writing far too much on the line. So you can block it off so there is room still for your reader to answer the question. So there's one of my examples. Another one I've got is a retrieval question. So I said, what was the name of Bruno's school? So if you can remember yesterday, what the reader will need to do is go into the text and have a look at what the school was called. And you can see here that it says, let's get it straight for you, they set off And the orange dragon said his school was in the happy tree. So that's a retrieval question. Now remember, you don't need to write the answers, you only need to write the questions. Okay, and now I've got another example that I've done for question 3. And this is something that I've actually used what we've already done in our learning. So I've flicked back a couple of pages and I'll show you where I've got it from. So it wasn't that learning, it was when we did the jellyfish article. And can you see here where I said you need to pick an adjective which best describes the text, and we had a range to choose from: a factual, persuasive, fictional or exciting. Let me flick back to today's page. I've actually used that and then I've picked my own answers. So which adjective best describes this text? And it does say for question 3 to make these questions trickier. So make them trickier so they are worth 2 marks. So this might be a difficult one for your parents or your brothers or sisters at home to answer. So I've got which adjective best describes this text. Is it A, an article, B, a novel, or C, a poem? And then you can see by yesterday's writing that it's definitely not an article. It's not laid out in 2 separate columns. There's no heading for me to follow. And it's also not a poem because I can see speech in there and it follows a storyline. And remember, we had our build-up, we had our problem, our resolution and our closing statement. So it actually follows a story. And another word for a story could also be novel. Okay, so I'm going to come back onto the screen now. So today our learning is going to be to create our own comprehension style questions. Now when you finish that, it would be great if you could just give it to mum, dad or whoever's in your room and get them to answer the question, so when they send your work in, I can see your parents' work or your grandparents' work, and that would be really good that we could send their work in for a change, couldn't we? But you've got to be asking some really good questions. Now, as always, I do love to have a challenge, so I've got a challenge for you, but I think you'll enjoy this one. Okay, so my challenge. So I've got to find someone in your household to answer the comprehension style questions. Now, my other challenge is that I want you to have a lovely drawing of your dragon. So if it's got a name tag, you might have named it. So mine was called Bruno. I want you to draw and name your dragon as well. So that's my challenge. So I've got one challenge here, but I also did want to set this other one. So I want you to draw your dragons. I think that'd be really nice. So does it have a spiky back, or does it have unicorn hair? It is completely up to you, but it's going to be really nice to see them coming in. So I look forward to seeing your work and your parents' work and your grandparents' work. And that would be really good. So make sure you set them really difficult questions, but I want to see that you're asking the right questions as well. So good luck everybody, and I look forward to seeing them.